What's up, all you cool cats? Welcome to Great American Film Off here on the Dill Pickle Movie Network or on Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you listen to us. Thank you for listening. Yeah, I'm here with my good pal Krosby. Hey, Krosby.
Heyo, how's it going, Dylan?
It's going well. As you all saw last week, we didn't have a show for you because I was in the midst of a move. My schedule got crazy, then Krosby's schedule got crazy, so we were juggling it around, and we said, let's just wait till next week. So you'll be getting 2 shows this month. We promise you. It just may not be the first and third week. We promise, and we have a good show for you lined up next time. But here we are here to talk about Tom Hanks.
And, the one and only Tom Hanks.
Yeah, I mean, talk about a laundry list of amazing movies.
He's one of those actors, you know what I mean? There's a handful, and I feel like a lot of people have different lists, but I think they often comprise a couple who break the top every time with, of course, the Viola Davis, Tom Hanks, Meryl Streep, Daniel Day-Lewis, Denzel, perhaps.
Yeah, those people who will have 3 Oscars by the end of their lifetime, if not more.
At least.
I think
just
Tom,
wild.
Yeah, I think Tom's working on his 3rd. He's gotten 2.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I think Nicholson's gotten 3. I think Meryl Streep's gotten 3. Mm-hmm. Daniel's gotten 3 for sure.
DDL,
he should have 5, but
he should win one every year. There should be an award called the Daniel Day-Lewis Award. It should be for Daniel Day-Lewis every year.
Of course. So what we do on the show is we set a topic as we did Best Tom Hanks movie, and then we break it up into 5 categories, 5 rubric points, where we go down the list. They're all different rubric points every time, except for the 5th one, which we'll get to in a sec. But we have a different rubric system, and then we basically give points depending on our own arguments on what we felt was the strongest argument for that rubric point. First to 3 points wins the film off. I can't remember what our tally is. I'll have that for next time in terms of wins. But I do believe I won the last one, which was mockumentaries.
It's tight, if I remember.
Tight. Oh, yeah.
It's
I
neck and neck.
I think it's either tied or like one of us is ahead by 1 or something.
It's like the Celtics and the Lakers.
Exactly. Yeah, one of us is Larry Bird, one of us is Kareem, one of us is Magic even. I mean, which one would you want to be if you had to be Lakers or Celtics? I mean, I'm assuming
Lakers. Well, I live in LA now, so I'd have to go Lakers. But the Celtics have more championships, so it's
Really? Oh, I didn't even know that. Who has the most? Is it the Celtics?
I think it's the Celtics. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm a Nets fan, so we haven't even won one. We haven't even won one here with the Nets. So hopefully this is the year.
Hey, they look good. They look like they might be coming.
Yeah, they're up 2-1 now. So hopefully they can win their next 2 games.
That game, actually, it was excellent.
Yeah. All right, so let's get into it. Crosby, why don't you tell us about our rubric this week?
Absolutely. So for Best Tom Hanks Movie, for our first rubric point, we have the Hanks Himself Award. This one is obvious. It's the Tom Hanks performance in the movie and how it stacks up to other great Tom Hanks performances over time, a.k.a. every Tom Hanks performance. Moving on. The Okay But Who Else Award. This is like let's be real, if you're in a Tom Hanks movie and you're not Tom Hanks, you're in the supporting cast. And this is an award that says, okay, let's compare those casts and let's see what we're dealing with. Is it just Tom Hanks carrying the film? Nothing wrong with that. But is it that, or is he bolstered by an incredible cast? Third, the Hanks But No Hanks Award. We're very proud of this one. So for this, basically what we're saying is, okay, Tom Hanks is amazing. If you took Tom Hanks out of this movie and you replaced him with one of his contemporaries, say Tim Robbins or Michael Keaton,
good replacements.
Yeah, there you go. Great replacements. But how would this film feel? Would it still stack up, or would it be missing something fundamentally? Then, of course, the Wholesome Hanksome Award. It's a bit of a cheesy award, but I would also argue it's important because part of Tom Hanks's great skill as an actor is to bring this emotion to the table that you almost don't expect, regardless of his performance. And so for this, we're sort of saying, okay, what emotional impact does this film have on you? How warm, fuzzy, and Hanksy does it make you feel? And as always, to end it out, the Netflix and Chex Mix scale. How rewatchable is this film? And I would say for this one, it's probably how rewatchable is the performance, right?
Yeah,
like
definitely.
How much do you want to show other people?
Right, because at first we were like, maybe we'll do like best Tom Hanks performance, but then it's like, how do we break a performance into 5 specific categories? Instead, it's how good is the film? But I do think a lot of the film, when we're talking about Tom Hanks, rests on the shoulders of Tom Hanks,
exactly on his broad shoulders.
Unless it's like Toy Story, where it's like, yeah, it's
right,
a Disney animated movie first. Tom Hanks is a voice. Every other movie pretty much is Tom Hanks. It's a Tom Hanks movie, no matter who the director is and all that. So.
Yeah.
So a lot of great rubric points, a lot of hard rubric points. It'll be definitely pretty difficult.
And
but
so many films to choose from with this.
Exactly. And at the end of the show, as always, we do read your poll answers. And this, I think, was the most spread out amongst any poll we've had of how diverse the movie, just the filmography is so expansive. There were movies ranging from the 80s all the way to last year on the list. So I really was blown away by how many films he's done and how many good films he's done.
He's an icon.
Yeah, both on camera and some behind the camera. He's directed, I think, 2 films. So let's talk about our choices, because I won the last one. So Krosby, you will have the first pick here honestly, I think this is almost harder to be the first one here, because now you have so many to choose from. At least me, now I'll have one off the table. So yeah. Tell us, Krosby, what is your pick?
I think with a Tom Hanks film, it's like drafting someone in the NBA. You know what I mean? You got to investigate all the possibilities.
Right.
I took Forrest Gump out to dinner, talked with their parents. Saw what we were dealing with. I worked out Saving Private Ryan. We were really pleased with his workout. But end of the day, with my pick, I had to go with The Green Mile.
Wow.
I think in the conversation for the most underrated movie of all time, and it's still very well thought of.
Yeah.
But together with the movie itself, and then the Tom Hanks performance that I think shows just what he's capable of as an actor, specifically 100%. The accent, because I'm an accent guy. Like I'm not great at accents, but I like watching people who do good accents. He has one of the few Southern accents in film that you can really believe. I love that.
So that's a good segue to mine. Because you took him out. You took him out to dinner, but I drafted him. I'm taking Forrest Gump for my team. And here's the thing. I will have him play ping pong, I'll have him run cross country, and I'll have him play football. He's a triple threat, man. I picked Forrest Gump. I picked Forrest Gump, and I've talked about it even on this channel before. But the thing is, like, it's one of those movies that is just always on whenever I'm just need something to turn on. It's always something that I think about often because I quote it. I sometimes eat at the restaurant. It's a cultural thing where it's become even more than just a movie. It is just one of those movies that I think, as much as some people may say, like, oh, it's of its time, it's dated, it's not the best, he's come out with better, whatever, I think it's the one that I personally like the most. And honestly, this show is about us. It's not about everyone else.
Exactly.
So everyone else, I'll read your poll results later, but this is about me and you, Krosby, and I think this is probably the one that I love the most. And again, another Southern accent that...
and it's so great. It's good. It's just... it's funny that you say that about you always watching it. When my brother was in college, Forrest Gump was the film that was always on the TV. Whenever he was going to sleep, doing homework, whatever. Always Forrest Gump. Because
it's also one of those movies where you can just pick up wherever and watch it and enjoy it. Because it's a life story. It's not like you need to know something in the beginning to really get something later on. It's not like a David Fincher film where every little scene has a clue. No, it's just you're watching someone's life, and it's beautiful. Epic. And I think, there might be better films that he's been in, but I think a showcase of him as a Tom Hanks film, I think these two films really are Tom Hanks movies and good to talk about. So let's go right ahead to the Hanks Himself Award. Let's talk about his performance in these movies, because that is what we're here to do first and foremost. Krosby, why don't you talk about The Green Mile?
Oh, thank you, sir. The Green Mile. So The Green Mile is actually one of my favorite books as well. I'm a bit of a Stephen King nut.
Nice.
And the thing I think that's important about the movie is that it doesn't cut things from the book that are important, which I think that a lot of films do, obviously not on purpose, but you can't really know until the film comes out, which I think is something that people don't cut enough slack with, which is, the movie is almost always not as good as the book, but you're not working with the same medium. You know what I mean? So putting all that aside, to Hanks's performance, he brings this humanity with Green Mile that I think is almost unmatched in cinema when you see a character of genuine compassion who is also an everyman. I think it almost requires an audience member to sit down and sympathize with the story. And I think that his accent, the way he walks, is really distinctive and different than the way Tom Hanks sometimes walks. It's a bit stronger and it's a bit broader. And together with, yes, a stellar supporting cast, but combining all that together really, I think, leaves you with this package of an excellent performance, but that is also appropriate. It doesn't overpower the way some really incredible performances occasionally do, to where you lose the rest of the film.
Where it's a one-man show. Yeah.
Exactly. No shade at my great love, Daniel Day-Lewis, but Lincoln, the only thing I really remember about Lincoln is him.
Right.
You know, and
agree.
there's a lot of other stuff that goes on in that movie. There's like a whole Tommy Lee Jones subplot. There's a bunch of good stuff. But all I remember is Daniel Day-Lewis. The Green Mile is a story in which Tom Hanks plays the lead character and does so appropriately. And I think that is just as important out of like one of the superstar greatest of all time actors as is the skill and the grace and the ability to you know, just take over a scene.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, great stuff there. I mean, I would say the same thing about Forrest Gump too. I mean, it's this physicality that is just, yeah, it's like almost the everyman, but there's even that other level of, he's even like, I'd say even a step below that, in the fact that he's not necessarily the brightest, not the smartest, not the wisest, but because he's so wholesome, he's so genuine, and he just speaks right from the heart. As a matter of fact, I mean, in the wrong actor's hands, some of that material might be like almost a little cringy because he's so matter of fact. Everything is so just on the nose that sometimes you might be like, wait, what? But for him, it's so endearing because I think Tom Hanks himself is so endearing. And like you said, with physicality, it's interesting to see him at the beginning of the movie where he's even more awkward. And just as the film progresses, seeing how he gets more and more, I wouldn't say matures, because he's already matured, but almost kind of finds more independence and finds, you know, an ability to kind of stand on his own. Like when he runs across the country, it's a different Forrest running than it is earlier on in the film when he's running away from the school bullies and he breaks free. Obviously, that's a younger actor, but then when he's older and running around too. And just that commitment itself to growing out the beard and committing to doing all the war scenes. And, you know, sometimes when you sign on to do a war film, it takes a lot of your body, and then he's doing that, and he's running, and he's, you know, having to do the romance stuff, and he's doing the great monologues on the bench. He's doing the narration. He's doing everything. He's juggling so much. Yeah. He's basically doing the work of like 3 actors. Like a normal movie might have 3 different actors at different stages of his life, but this is just him doing it pretty much all of it, except for when he's a kid. And I think that's just so impressive. And just the dialogue that sticks with you. I mean, this is one of my most quotable movies because of how good Tom 100%. Hanks is at, you know, delivering these lines where it's like, you know, you don't just know the words, you know the cadence, you know the different registers in the voice, you know the accent. I mean, again, it's hard because these are 2 brilliant accents as well.
Absolutely.
But again, like another actor might, you know, do too much with the accent to where it becomes almost offensive in a way, because it never states exactly what Forrest Gump like if he has any sort of know mental illness or whatever.
He's obviously different, but
he's different, but it never really specifies. Specific. Yeah, but in the wrong actor's hands, it might become more of a gimmick toward a certain community of people.
I agree that I think that, you know, the story only works in the context of the facts of the story, in the context of a character who has a 70 IQ. You know what I mean? Right. Like that's what the story is. But I think that what you're saying, like, because of the nuance that the great Thomas Hanks brings to the performance, it's never too much.
Right.
And so at the end of the day, you're just left with a performance that feels so real. And at the end of the day, just makes you closer to a person who's very different than you are.
Yeah. And the film itself is so out there. Like these are not normal circumstances. Like running into how many different U.S. presidents, going off to war, starting a shrimping company, becoming a multi-billionaire. This is not normal happenstance for the normal person, but he makes it feel relatable. He makes you feel like you walked in his shoes or ran, per se, in his shoes. But, these are not relatable circumstances as much as they are just a relatable matter of being and lifestyle and positive outlook on life, all that. So it's definitely tough comparing the two. It's very hard because it's Tom Hanks. Like, we're comparing apples and oranges, and they're the ripest apples and oranges on the tree.
In all the land.
So, I've got a nice Alabama orange here, with some shrimp. But, you've also got a beautiful green apple. So
it's I think when you compare performances like this, they're similar and they're so different. Obviously they bring some of the similar regionalities to it, but the characters are so different, and in very basic and important ways.
Mm-hmm.
I gotta stick to my guns with a character who is so realistic but compassionate and draws the audience so much as a surrogate, which Stephen King main characters are very good at doing. But still, it takes a big performance to do that. But it also takes somebody who knows when not to go too far.
Yeah, I also think, we'll get into this a little bit later with like everything else award, but I do think with Forrest Gump, he's really helped by the fact that the material itself has a lot of good one-liners and a lot of good dialogue that makes the character more memorable and whereas I feel like The Green Mile, the performance is really, you have obviously beautiful Stephen King work to work with, but it's made iconic by his performance, whereas Forrest Gump, I feel like there are other elements of Forrest that are iconic. This is another rubric point, the Hanks but no Hanks. So I guess I can't even argue that for this point. So I think we might have to coin flip it. I was trying to talk myself into a way to giving it to you, but I was like, they're two of his best performances. I feel like of any rubric point, this is the one I think that most warrants a spin, a series. Yeah. Flip, not a spin. I'm not spinning a wheel.
Ahead.
All right. I'm heads, your tails, always, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. Siri, flip a coin. You're getting your first point, Krosby. So, the Hanks himself award is going to The Green Mile. We're up 1-0, Krosby. You're up 1-0. I'm down. All right. Time to make a comeback. Come on. Boop, boop. All right. Okay, but who else? So now we're taking Tom Hanks completely out of the equation in the fact that we are talking solely about the other actors in the movie, because at the end of the day, this is Best Tom Hanks movie, not Best Tom Hanks performance. Best Tom Hanks performance, we already figured out Green Mile. Now, everyone else, and I know I have a little bit of a mountain to climb with this one, a tall mountain, if you will. Krosby, who else?
So, in Green Mile, you have a really stellar supporting cast. Specifically, I got to give a shout out to Sam Rockwell, who is young, and it's the type of performance that he later becomes very iconic for, which is sort of this stellar supporting type of guy. But I think this is an old movie now, and I don't know. For me, it's always amazing when you watch an actor sort of start to define their niche in one of their early works.
Right.
I think that's really cool for a film. And I think in terms of who else, you also specifically have to give a big who else to Stephen King, who is not in the cast, but who obviously has a really big impact on the film and on its script. This is not like when Kubrick directed The Shining and it was specifically a non-Stephen King endeavor. You know? Let me just very quickly... sorry, 1 second. I'm just pulling up IMDb so I can go through some of these names. I don't want to leave people off. Yeah,
I was going to say also, because, the writing, you got to take that into account, because this is not also... Stephen King is known for horror, and I do think there are horrific elements, surely, to this, but this is more drama than horror. And to see him almost break away, it's also with Shawshank Redemption, same director, too, who directed Green Mile, Frank Darabont, who...
The great Darabont.
Who does a really good job of, bringing this darkness to these movies. Yes, it brings the darkness to the material, because Stephen King ultimately is a dark writer. But 100%. You also have a lot more nuanced because it's not going full horror. It's not It's not Pet Sematary. This is like a pretty profound, deep work for Stephen King himself. So
it's like it's perfect that you bring up Shawshank because it's in such a similar mold. But together with some of these great performances, specifically, I got to shout out David Morse. David Morse is amazing. It's brutal. Michael Clark Duncan, rest in peace.
Yes, I mean that was the one I said when I said tall mountain. I mean, this huge.
He gives this just remarkable, incredible performance. And the other thing that I think is so important is that he is physically right for the role. Right. And I think that in today's cinema, we get very, very into casting these names that we know and that we love. And that's fantastic. But I think sometimes it can lead to almost weird variations from a character where it's like, oh, that's nothing like what the character is kind of supposed to be like. But I love that with his performance of John Coffey, he knocks it out of the park, and he looks like John Coffey.
Yeah, I mean that moment, I mean that's just one of the most tear-jerking moments in history, and it's not even Tom Hanks's. I mean, if you pick out the saddest moments of The Green Mile, the one that comes to mind to me first is a moment that is mostly Michael Clark Duncan's. That scene. It's just so heartbreaking, and his performance is just, I mean, it's amazing. Yeah, I mean,
absolutely.
Yeah. So
it's a glorious cast and a glorious crew. All the prison guards are incredible. All the prisoners are incredible. What more could you want? Tell me what you're thinking, Bill.
Yeah, well, what I'm thinking for Forrest Gump is that, the core of this movie is not just Forrest and finding himself, but it's him and Jenny. It's this friendship that is made so young that he carries with him, and it becomes his motivating factor in the whole film. His overall objective is, to make Jenny proud almost, to run when she said to run. He always kept that in the back of his mind. And when we don't see her we see her often, but not the whole way through, but she's always feels like a presence because Robin Wright is so sincere and sweet. That is 100%. A character that's a character that goes down a dark path that can easily be judged. People could get turned off by some of the things she does in the movie, some of the places she goes. She has a rough time, but totally. I think with Robin Wright's performance, it keeps it relatable enough so we do connect with her and we do feel for her. And when she's always made these mistakes, when she comes back to him, we're not saying, go away, you were terrible.
Yeah.
We're saying, no, please come back to him because this works, and it's great that they get married even beyond the realm of romance. I mean, it's just soulmate, the idea of a soulmate, not even needing to be a romantic soulmate for most of their life, but finding each other and finding that connection. You got a great performance of Sally Field. I know we talked about Lincoln. You couldn't even tell me she was in Lincoln because, again, Daniel Day-Lewis commands the performance, commands the film.
But she's wonderful.
Here, I think she does stand out because while Tom Hanks is amazing and he's the star, Sally Field has another great moment too. Like I just talked about Michael Clark Duncan. Some of the saddest moments in this movie aren't even Tom's. They're Sally Field's or Robin Wright's or even Gary Sinise as Lieutenant Dan, the guy that you're supposed to hate and then love, because he goes on his own arc. And I think that's interesting with the amount of time that both these movies have. These are long movies, yours even more so than mine. But we have so much time to give each character their own story and make it feel like an ensemble film. Even though it is a Tom Hanks film at its core, there are so many a bountiful of amazing performances to pick from just in the supporting cast. It's really hard. Bubba is great. I'm blanking on the name of the actor.
Of course.
But fantastic. Yeah, he's amazing too. A great presence in a small role. Again, a lot of great small roles. Even, again, they're not really actors, but like the archival footage of the presidents and John Lennon and Elvis and just those other things where, I obviously wouldn't call them actors, but they're people that are in the movie to give it more legitimacy and
they give it
cool effects. Yes, they give it significance. It's almost like a history lesson told from a different point of view where it's like you got to take some stuff with a grain of salt. But there's also an amazement by it, like how they're able to funnel history through the eyes of this person and all those other elements. And again, Robert Zemeckis, another person I got to shout out, director, directed the hell out of it. So it's tough. Great ensembles, great directors behind both. I mean, it's tough. It's so tough. I don't know. I'm leaning Forrest Gump only because I feel like, I think just the idea of women in general, there are more women roles in this, which was also Bonnie Hunt. Yes, correct. never mind then.
Well, no, but it is true. There's the female roles are certainly more central to
right.
to Forrest Gump.
Yeah, and I mean Haley Joel Osment as his son, I just forgot about and just remembered again.
True.
Like just really great range of performances just across the board. I'm gonna go with Forrest Gump. I'm leaning toward it just because I think those other roles are almost as iconic as Forrest Gump. Like Mama always said life was like a box of chocolates. Mama herself is such a big important part. Jenny, you don't think of Forrest without Jenny, whereas I think Green Mile, there might be one or two performances that I do think are almost as amazing, if not more, than Tom Hanks. But
yeah,
I think the characters that these actors created in Forrest Gump are a little bit more memorable than Green Miles. But again, it's tough. It's tough. Let me know. We can go to a coin flip if you want.
We might have to. It's I can't disagree with you that the characters from Forrest Gump are so memorable in like this very broad, almost mythic kind of way. You know what I mean? But I will say I think a huge part of why Green Mile is so effective is that it makes you have relationships with these people, and then it makes you watch them die. And that has kind of a powerful impact when you know that's coming. Because in most films, you don't know when a character is going to die.
Right, like Forrest Gump, it's like, oh, is Jenny going to make it out? And then when she doesn't, it's like, oh, that sucks. And rewatching it, but Green Mile, it's often surprising.
No, it's true. And with Green Mile, it's, you know that these characters are going to die eventually. They're going to be
expiration dates. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, the prisoners will be put to death. But what is interesting is, because it's Stephen King, you almost have to ask yourself, like, but how many of them will actually wind up going out that way? You know what I mean? And without spoiling anything for the movie, but it's just a really powerfully ensemble-driven piece that has really powerful narration from Tom Hanks in his performance. But I think I gotta stick with my cast too. We gotta flip for it.
That's fine. Again, this is a hard show because everything about these movies is really, really good. All right,
it's true.
Siri, flip a coin. Oh my gosh.
Tails!
She is on your train today.
Tails is always underrated.
I might get shut out. We'll see. 2-0. It's okay. If you get this point, you win. So this is big, Krosby. Hanks, but no Hanks. So are we going to award the point to the movie that still stands even with Tom out of it? Or are we awarding the point to the movie that is most improved with Tom?
So I was thinking we would be awarding the point to the one that is still good without him, was my thought.
Yeah, but so not like, oh, you need Tom in your movie, so you get the point. It's the other way around.
Ideally, you don't need Tom Hanks.
Right, because we're talking about the Tom Hanks movie, not the performance. Right?
Exactly,
okay, so which movie can stand... Oh, shoot.
On its own.
So which movie can stand without Tom at the central? I'll start. It's tough because I don't know who else would do... I mean, obviously anyone could do this role. As a role, anyone could do any role, but how do you do a role like this and not somehow come across as either stereotyping?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a very hard tightrope to walk because this is a role. He talks in a certain way that can be sometimes interpreted as someone with a mental disability, which is fine. And I think the movie does a good job saying you aren't what you are defined as. Stupid is as stupid does. And I love that about it. But with a different actor, does that become more of like the stereotype? We talk about Rain Man sometimes with Dustin Hoffman. If it's not Dustin Hoffman, it could be a much worse performance. We talk even that movie Music that came out that Sia directed. There was a girl putting on a stereotype of an autistic girl, and it was a very offensive stereotype. So I'm wondering, in the wrong hands, does this end up being this really bad stereotype? And are we talking about it like, wow, that was offensive? And that, honestly, I think is the power of Tom Hanks, is the fact that it doesn't come across offensive at all. And it feels so genuine.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't know if Forrest Gump walks into the territory where it could get super offensive, due only to the story itself and how positively Forrest is presented.
Luckily, they do
basically a
maneuver well.
saint.
Yeah.
But
I mean, he helps everyone out of these terrible situations.
and
The war itself.
He does more than a person could do, like than any person could do. And that's what's incredible. But I think that I do have to say, I think Green Mile as a story is just excellent. It has that weird Stephen King thing where you don't really know what's going on for like the majority of it. And then once you get it, it kind of puts the rest of it into a little bit more perspective. It has these characters that are like beyond compelling. It has a really excellent plot and an excellent script. But I have to say, if the main character of Tom Hanks isn't carrying this enormous exposition load behind him, I don't know if you keep watching. I think it's really, I don't know, because it's a part that could wind up frankly being kind of boring in the wrong hands. It's almost the opposite of Forrest Gump, in that where Forrest Gump could be so far in the wrong direction that you say, my God, what even is that? You know what I mean? Like, that's not a person. This movie, I feel like, could go so far in the other direction of like, well, that was forgettable. you know? True.
I also think with Forrest Gump, it was such a visual masterpiece at its time, because you had those archived, presidents and all those different people. It was really, really amazing what they did visually with that film.
Holds up.
Stylistically.
Really holds up.
Cinematography, the music. So I think there are other elements that, even if a bad actor was at the core, playing Forrest, I don't think they would, it might be a worse depiction of Forrest. It might make him seem like, this character, not rather than saying offensive, but one that you just can't take seriously, I guess is the right word to say.
No, I think that's I think that is the perfect way to put it.
Someone just you really can't take seriously
at all.
Yeah. And then, so I think there are enough other elements of the movie that even if the acting, even if Tom isn't in it and it's like, oh, this performance sucks, at least you could be like, wow, that is a beautiful landscape he's running by, or wow, those are awesome visual effects, or oh, that war scene was so cool. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so I'm making a case for the Forrest Gump standing without Tom Hanks, which is crazy to say, but I do think it might.
Well, and it also, I think we have to take into account what we're saying with, like, if you put an actor of that time in. And this is a crop of talented dudes. You know what I mean? In that time, you got Tim Robbins, you got Sean Penn. You got a lot of guys, like, you've got a lot of really great actors in that chunk. That being said, honestly, I think that Tom Hanks being in Forrest Gump has a little bit more impact on the whole movie of Forrest Gump than Tom Hanks being in Green Mile has on the whole movie of Green Mile. So for that, I think I still have to stick with Green Mile, because I think if you take Tim Robbins, a Stephen King alumnus, if you take even Morgan Freeman, another Stephen King alumnus, if you pop them in those roles, what you're dealing with, I think, for Green Mile is a completely different experience, but an incredible movie that you'd still talk about in its own right. I think that if you do that with Forrest Gump, you have an entirely different experience. It could be incredible, but it could also, to me, just be another one of those 90s movies, that are really good and brilliantly directed, but you just kind of forget. Terms of Endearment was like that for me. Great movie, but I never am like, oh, Terms of Endearment, I gotta watch that again.
Yeah, and a lot of those 90s movies do, like you said, fall into that trap. So this is make or break right now. We're flipping again. A third flip. I think this is a record maybe for the most flips.
It is.
We might even still have to flip in the future.
So passionately about these films. It's important.
I mean, but that's the goal, isn't it? Isn't it in the goal to stick by your film and really fight for it? Like sometimes I'll secede the point and I'll be like, you know what, maybe I should have fought for that better. But here I'm sticking to my guns. Siri, flip a coin. Oh my gosh.
Oh, it's a sweep. Tails.
It's a sweep. Oh,
but
man.
we gotta keep going. We gotta know what these points are. That's why we're here. We're here for the audience,
I was gonna say, Krosby has won this film off 3 to 0. I mean, it might be 3-2. Who knows? Let me fight for it. But
We'll see.
Forrest Gump just got ran over by a green mile. He didn't even run a whole mile. He started running and then he stopped. Forrest stopped.
But to be fair, it could have gone either way. Let's be fair.
Right. This could be a 3-0
Dylan Krosby sweep right now. So.
Right. So the Wholesome Handsome Award, and this is one I'll really fight for because I think just Forrest Gump as a whole is just so positive and so. I mean, this is why he gets that image, because in Big he's of course wholesome and big, but he's like this little kid who grows up and he's this big guy, and it's like it's like more for the funny and League of Their Own. He's a tough coach. He's wholesome, but he's got a little bite. He's got a little bite to him, and even Castaway. It's not necessarily about the wholesomeness of him. It's more the rugged nature and all that, the rawness. But here it's all wholesome. I think this is one of the most wholesome characters. I mean, this is a character that I modeled a lot of my childhood over just because I loved his outlook, 100%. His optimism on life. So I'm going to fight definitely for this one because I think Forrest Gump is one of the most wholesome characters you can get because he's just so aloof and so matter of fact and so optimistic. And it's a beautiful way of life that sometimes could be the detriment to someone, and sometimes it is the detriment to Forrest Gump. Sometimes he falls into obstacles because of it, maybe because he's a little too trusting or too naive. Sure. But it ends up working in the end, and especially with his kid, when his kid is getting on the bus and he's got that moment and that exchange behind him. It's just so wholesome. When he finds out he has the kid, he says, "Is that mine?" She goes, "It's yours, Forrest." And he goes, "Is he smart?" And he kind of holds his chest and starts crying. It's it's so wholesome. It's so beautiful, and it's one of the most positive characters. And I mean, I know Green Mile, he's also wholesome in that too. So give me your case, but I am sticking really hardcore with this one. Of all the rubric points, this is the one I think Forrest Gump writes itself for.
Let me just preface this by saying Stephen King is not wholesome. He's just not. He's my favorite author. He's not wholesome. Yeah. It's just not what he does. Part of the cool thing about Stephen King characters is that, or at least the good guy characters or good girl characters, is that they choose to do good after going through horrific things, which Forrest Gump also does. But in Forrest Gump's ascent, it's a bit more focused on how his ability to not let people tell him who he is, it allows him to live an extraordinary life. A life that truly anyone would envy. And it's unexpected from such humble beginnings.
Right.
With the Green Mile, I think it is wholesome, but in a very different way. It sort of asks very big questions, about how just certain forms of punishment are and about how we as a society should deal with certain types of people. And I think that in the compassion that is shown throughout the film, I think that is very wholesome and it's beautiful. But kind of the point of the whole film is that even though there were great things going on and even though there were positive things happening, you can't really stop the system once it's gotten started. And Forrest Gump is almost the opposite. It's almost like you can do anything you want if you keep that. So I think you have to give it to Forrest Gump. It's just too uplifting. Every time you watch it, you're gonna be like, you know what? I'm gonna go out. I'm gonna do some stuff.
Yeah, I'm gonna go play ping pong. I'm gonna go eat some shrimp on the Barbie.
I'm gonna go to Bubba Gump's. We're looking for a sponsorship.
Just say, if you need a sponsor, Bubba Gump, we are here. We will eat all your food for free, as long as we can advertise you. Free sponsorship. That's great. Now Netflix and Checkbook. This is gonna be interesting because I think yours is a lot more of a heavy drama. So how often do you want to rewatch it? But at the same time, its heaviness does not prevent it from being rewatchable. Whereas Forrest Gump, I think it's one of those movies that is heavy at times, but it is light enough that, again, you can put it on anywhere, anytime, and enjoy it,
1,000,000%.
and not feel like it's ruined your whole day watching it. It's not like the movie where you watch and you're just like, oh, I gotta go lay down. I gotta go take a nap. I gotta go bathe.
It's not first list,
no,
it's not,
God.
Yeah.
And Forrest Gump, it's that idea of, because it's so wholesome. I think all these kind of compile into one. The performance is so good. The other performances are great. The other elements of the movie are great, and it's so wholesome that it makes it rewatchable. I think it checks all the boxes for Forrest Gump. But I'd love to hear about the Green Mile and its rewatchability.
Well,
sorry to play.
I adore Green Mile. It's an incredible movie, and it's a movie that I like show to people if they haven't seen it. I'm like, I'm like, you haven't seen Green Mile? Oh my god, I'll throw it on. I have it on Prime. but in terms of rewatchability, it has that really heavy emotional toll of a movie that's set on death row, you know, and like, it's not a movie you're gonna leave being like, oh yeah, I can just throw that on. You know what I mean? You're not just gonna be like, oh yeah, you know, we'll get together. There's some chips. There's a little bit of dip. I throw on Green Mile in the background just to keep things loose. You know, like, that's not a thing. Like, you can do that with Forrest Gump.
Yeah.
You can be like, oh, everybody knows Forrest Gump. We're all gonna love the scenes. It's funny. It's quotable. You're gonna laugh.
Soundtrack.
Yeah, exactly. The soundtrack. And while the performances of Green Mile to me are so remarkable that I just am like blown away by them, and I rewatch them for the performances. The whole story is very Stephen King. It's very taxing, and it's very long. It's even longer than Forrest Gump.
Yeah.
And once you finish it, you have this kind of emotional like, okay, like that story's done. And now I get to move on and watch
it's heavy.
Something stupid. You know what I mean? Because I need to.
Yeah.
After watching that.
And I even think comparing it to like even another Frank Darabont Stephen King adaptation like Shawshank, I keep comparing it because that's the best thing to compare it to.
They're perfect comparison. Yeah.
That even like it's heavy, but I think there's just something about it that just makes it rewatchable because it is almost lighter in the moments it needs to be. Like it ends in such a great place, and the Brooks suicide is so sad, and yes, there's like
sad, but
the death of all the it starts heavy. So the second act then with the big escape and the end with the beach, like that's also nice. Whereas this one, it's like
etc.
It's consistently heavy to the point where credits roll and you're like, all right, I'll revisit that in like 4 years. You know,
exactly.
I mean, me and you, it might be like, okay, I'll revisit it in a few months, but like the normal person,
I know what you mean.
would probably put it off for a little while. Like I've never seen Schindler's List twice for that reason. You know, I've only seen it once. It was in a Holocaust class I took in high school, and I remember it so vividly that I don't need to see it again. You know, So it's one of those films. I don't think it's that depressing. I mean, it is, but it's not at Schindler's level. But it's definitely not at the Forrest Gump level.
But it's sad. It's very sad, and it sticks with you. It lingers with you for a bit. You know.
Yeah, and if we're looking at the Chex Mix part of it, like what draws us to the screen and makes us want to just keep stuffing our mouth with Chex Mix, I think Forrest Gump does that great too, because you always want to know what's going to happen next. Is he going to be with Jenny? Is he going to survive the war? Is Bubba going to live? Is Lieutenant Dan alive? All this stuff that keeps us entertained and glued to the screen.
I would be disingenuous if I didn't give this point to Forrest Gump, because part of the thing about Forrest Gump that you already touched upon, it's a really pretty movie. Like, it's really easy to watch, to just sit down and be like, oh, bright colors. Oh, fake interview with John Lennon. Very cool. You know, like, and Green Mile is a little bit more like JFK, where, like, in theory, there are chunks that you could watch by themselves and, like, jump in and out of and kind of know what's going on.
Right.
But really, like, it's not a movie that's meant to be like, you get up, you grab a beer, you go and take a jalapeno popper, and you go back 20 minutes later and keep watching the movie. Like, no, it's not that. It's not that at all. I think Forrest has to run away with this one.
I'm saying, you know, it doesn't matter because you won anyway, but I'm very proud that I made up those 2 points. It was not a sweep. It was an early sweep, but I came back to win 2 games, and that's fine. Two rounds.
Came back.
So
it was a game 7.
we posed it was a game 7, or in this case, game 5. What is the best Tom Hanks movie? We put up The Green Mile against Forrest Gump. Forrest Gump and what's his name in The Green Mile? I'm blanking.
You mean the name of the
character? Is it Paul? I just looked it up. Paul. Forrest and Paul played. Yep. Paul and Forrest went head to head, and in the end, Paul won. Tom Hanks' performance of Green Mile, determined by Siri. Also, the okay, but who else? The different casts. The cast of The Green Mile just outran Forrest Gump a little bit. and then the Hanks but no Hanks, all the other elements. Is it crucial for Tom Hanks to be there? And it was decided that the Green Mile succeeds even without Tom Hanks at the forefront. And then Wholesome Hanksome Award, it went to Forrest Gump because he is oh so wholesome. And Netflix and Chex Mix, it also went to Forrest Gump because we could rewatch it. But in the end, the winner is The Green Mile. Congratulations, Krosby.
I'm doing this one for you, Steven.
For Stephen King. Great time as always. I mean, it like we said at the beginning, there was so much to choose from. We'll read the poll in just a sec, but these were two great films to talk about. It is very hard. As similar as they are, there could not be more different. But they are two of the best. So I'm happy. If I'm going to lose, I'm going to lose to this. I'm not going to lose to something like Polar Express or something like that. Sorry, all you Polar Express lovers. I just can't stand that movie. I don't know why, but
it's scary.
it's frightening. Exactly. Thank you.
As a
all right.
It frightens me.
Shall we get into this poll? This is a great poll result. I mean, you guys really, really, really took to these polls and made an amazing selection of all these movies. So I'm going to go through all of these. There are a lot. Hope, our good friend Hope, says Toy Story in all caps, but also League of Their Own holds a place in my heart emoji. So Toy Story, League of Their Own, again, Toy Story, one of the staples. We decided not to choose it between the both of us because, yes. Great line. Ben chose Castaway, another one we mentioned, which is great. Gavin chose You've Got Mail or Philadelphia. Philadelphia, the first film he won an Oscar for.
Oh, Philadelphia. Oh, that's a great choice.
Great choice. Trish said, how do you even choose? Because
I hear that, Trish.
You hear that, Trish. Jason says, underrated pick, That Thing You Do. This was my backup because it is not just a Tom Hanks starring film. It is a Tom Hanks directed film, and it is unbelievably wholesome and fun. I do recommend it if you haven't seen it, Krosby. It's very good. It's about a boy band traveling around and touring, and Tom Hanks is their manager, and it is beautiful.
Oh, love that.
Lauren says Castaway. Nina, my sister, says Toy Story in all caps. Yes, we love Toy Story in my household. Jackie says
it's a great franchise.
Jackie says A League of Their Own. There's another one for that.
Totally.
Will, our good friend Will, says Forrest motherfucking Gump.
This guy gets it.
Lily says, what a question in all caps. If we're talking pure raw talent, I got to go with Castaway. So that is her favorite performance. Lily said, another Lily says, Splash. Haha. Love it too. Great early rom-com.
Ron Howard.
Who is this? Oh, I don't have your real name. It's like a
stranger.
No, Ian. There it is. The Instagram handle was not his full name, but Ian says That Thing You Do is definitely top tier. There's another one for that. Peyton says Captain Phillips, another great one.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
Oh gosh, Kelsey says, are you counting the Polar Express? Because what a performance he gave in that.
That movie Kelsey scares me.
But
it really scares me.
If you all want to take to the comment section, go watch Marvelous Movie Mondays with me and Kelsey. Kelsey, you can tell her in the comments how wrong she is for picking Polar Express because that is a scary movie. Troll her in the comments, everyone. Haley says, Haley was our last one. It says 2 movies. One of them is The Green Mile, and the other one is Saving Private Ryan, which is another amazing. That was
my backup pick.
Amazing choice. Yeah, again, that was my third pick because, again, it's so many to pick from. There's one that hasn't been mentioned, Catch Me If You Can. Is amazing.
Oh, sure. Catch Me If You Can. I'm a big fan of The Post, personally.
The Post is great. My dad loves, what's it called? Da Vinci Code.
Sure. Da Vinci Code's great.
There's also the Da Vinci Code, other movies like Angels and Demons and Inferno. And then there's also
Da Vinci Code 2 and Da Vinci Code 1/2.
Right. And then there's the most recent, which is A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, where he plays the most wholesome man alive, Mr. Rogers. So...
Fair point.
The next step is for him to voice Paddington because I don't think you can get more wholesome than that,
Look at that. There we go.
Amazing poll options. You guys really did create a bunch of great films. I've actually never seen Splash, so I might have to watch that. But
there you go.
We are now passing the torch from Tom Hanks to a whole genre. We're not doing another actor right now.
Many hands.
Krosby, why don't you tell us what our next topic will be?
So, to celebrate In the Heights being like the best reviewed movie of all time,
being up there in the heights of film criticism, if you will, for the past week.
Man,
I saw it. I loved it.
Love for that. I haven't. Dylan's watched it and I haven't, so I'm excited. I'm watching it soon. But to celebrate its release, we are going to be asking the question everyone wants us to ask. What is the most iconic movie musical of all time?
It was hard because we didn't want to define it to a specific era, but also we wanted to make it a little bit more finite in terms of most iconic, because best movie musical, In the Heights is not going to be the most iconic because it only came out today. When we're recording this, yesterday, if you're listening. So it's like, you can't say that, or even La La Land or something, is the most iconic yet. It has to build a legacy. So we figured, let's go most iconic, because then we can dive into some of the older ones, but we can keep it modern if we think they're the most iconic.
But we got to defend it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is going to be tough because I know we were both fond of a lot of those classic movie musicals. We're both musical guys. We both.
This is true.
Rooted in the theater, so we've got a tough challenge ahead of ourselves. I'm gonna watch some oldies, watch some goodies, oldies goodies in prep, find some backups in case. Even though I think I lost, so I will get the first pick. But maybe I'll pick an oddball choice just to kind of keep the conversation spicy. Who knows? But I cannot wait to talk movie musicals. Most iconic.
Give me a good one.
Movie musicals, yeah. And most of these musicals will probably have been movies before they were even shows, right? Because most iconic,
a lot of them.
Because a lot of the ones we're seeing, even like
musicals that have been on stage,
right? They're either musicals first, musicals afterwards. You never know. Sometimes there are movies that just haven't had musicals made of them yet. Like La La Land is not kind of musical because you can't put all those cars on stage. And when they figure that out, I will be amazed.
Exactly, right?
Maybe they just what's the big busy traffic street in LA that opening number takes place on? Do you know?
Oh, is it on Ventura?
Maybe, I'm not sure, but either way, they should rent out a whole street in LA and just perform La La Land
and just do it
outside on the opening number, then bring everyone in the theater after the opening number and be like, that was the car number. Now take a 15-minute intermission and take your seats.
Popcorn on their way in. It's a whole system.
Yeah, I'm gonna make that happen. An outdoor production of La La Land stage musical.
Dude,
anyway,
call me.
Crosby, yes. Oh my God, I'd love to see you play Ryan Gosling or John Lennon, or not John Lennon. Oh my God, John Legend. I said John Lennon. Oof. All right, Crosby. Any last words? Where can they find you?
Oh, well, they can find me on Instagram, Krosby J. Roza. Where can they find you, Dill?
They can find me on Twitter and Letterboxd at Dylan_Randazzo, and here at the Dill Pickle Movie Network. If you're watching on video, if you're listening to us, thank your ears so much. We thank your ears. There's to your ears for listening to us. But please check us out on video because we got cool faces too. At least Crosby does. Mine is okay. It's getting there.
Dylan's is hot.
It literally is.
I have really big eyebrows.
I was gonna say, I just moved into this new place and I don't have an AC yet in my room, so it is actually hot. I am hot and hot. So thank you, Crosby.
Whatever it is, it's great.
I'm slightly dying with this ring light heating me, but you know what? Anything for the podcast. If I have to channel that California heat here in New York, I will. That might be a fun show down the line to do, like best California movie and best New York movie. Duke it out.
Absolutely.
Anyway, if you have ideas for shows, let us know in the comments too, because we'd love to hear them. Because we're always looking for great ideas. In the Heights is coming. That's why we're doing movie musicals. But some days there aren't movies to base themes around.
Come out.
Have to outshot them. So thank you guys so much. Any last words, Crosby?
Much love. Kisses.
Much love, yes. Let's go Nets. Let's go. What's your team you're rooting for now? The
Clippers. Let's go Clippers. Great.
Let's go Nets. Let's go Clippers. Let's win. Let's beat those Bucks. Let's go Yankees. But that's a little later down the line. But right now, let's go Nets. Let's get that title. First NBA. First for the Clippers too, I believe, right?
Yes, correct.
If they win. Wow. So we're going for it's a year of firsts. Seasons of firsts. First year of this podcast. It's a great time. First for May or June. It's June already. We'll be back next time. Thanks for watching.